Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The sun hung low, casting a pale glow over the city streets as I lowered myself onto the hard curb outside my own mansion's gates. A shiver ran through me, not from the chilly air, but from the weight of what I was about to do. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the battered cap over my forehead, pulling it low enough to shield my face. I dressed in clothes I'd salvaged from an old box in the attic, threadbare trousers, a worn jacket, and scuffed shoes that pinched my toes. I was ready, or so I thought, for a night spent as Franklin Slater, a beggar. The world looked different from down here. I raised a small cardboard sign, "Need help," and stared into the flow of people that rushed by. Few spared me a second glance. Some didn't even offer a first. A businessman in a sharp suit walked briskly past, his gaze locked forward, shoulders squared as if I were nothing more than a stone in the road. Behind him, two teenagers snickered as they passed, one muttering, "Must be one of those guys who drank his life away." The comment stung more than it should have, and a strange unease settled in my stomach. What was I hoping to prove with this little experiment? And why was it already feeling more real than I'd expected? An hour passed. My body ached from sitting on the cold, unforgiving ground. The gates to my mansion loomed large behind me, a painful reminder of my wealth and status now stripped bare. Suddenly, a shadow stretched across the pavement before me. I looked up to see a small, elderly woman with tired eyes and frayed clothing standing over me, her gaze soft and filled with something I hadn't seen all evening: compassion. "You look like you could use a bit of help," she said, her voice trembling as she reached into her pocket. Her hand shook slightly as she fished out a few crumpled bills, barely enough for her own needs, and held them out to me. "You don't have to do this," I managed to say, feeling a tightness in my throat. She smiled, her expression warm yet knowing. "Sometimes the smallest kindness can make a world of difference," she whispered, pressing the money into my hand before continuing down the street without another word. I watched her go, feeling a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years: gratitude, humility. The world felt different from the ground up. And suddenly, I wondered how many people I had ignored, how many I had dismissed in my rush to the top. My thoughts were interrupted by the slamming of the mansion's front door. Clara, my housekeeper, marched toward me, her heels clicking against the cobblestones. She stopped just a few feet away, squinting as if she recognized me but couldn't quite place it. "You, get out of here," she spat, her voice cold and sharp. Before I could speak, she turned, grabbed a bucket by the side of the house, and threw icy water over me. The shock left me breathless. Without another word, she turned and fled back to the house, leaving me alone, soaked and shivering. The morning sun crept over the city's skyline, casting its cold light on me as I resumed my place by the gate. I shifted uncomfortably, feeling the dampness still clinging to my clothes from Clara's assault the night before. My mind raced, replaying her expression of horror, her sudden realization. But today, I had resolved to stay here, to see this experiment through. I gripped my cardboard sign with renewed determination, scanning the faces that moved past without a second glance. People streamed by, heads down, wrapped up in their lives, their chatter fading like distant echoes. My stomach growled, and I wondered for the first time how it felt to go a day without food. Then, through the crowd, I saw Etienne, my cook, bustling down the street with a grocery bag tucked under his arm. For a moment, I felt a flicker of relief, thinking he might recognize me. But as he drew closer, I noticed the same unseeing look in his eyes as he prepared to walk past. Before I could stop myself, I cleared my throat. "Spare some change, sir." Etienne stopped abruptly, looking down at me in surprise. His eyes scanned my face, and for a moment, I thought he'd seen through the disguise. But instead, he gave me a kind smile, kneeling down beside me. "You look like you've had it rough, friend," he said softly, reaching into his pocket. "Here, take this." He pulled out a few bills and pressed them into my hand, adding, Sometimes a little help can make all the difference. A lump formed in my throat. "Thank you," I murmured. He tilted his head, a hint of confusion flickering across his face. "How did you?" But he quickly shook it off, his warm smile returning. "It's nothing, really. Kindness doesn't cost a thing." He nodded once more, then rose to his feet and continued on his way, leaving me staring after him in stunned silence. His words echoed in my mind, each one like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of realization through me. It was only then that I noticed someone else standing in the shadows nearby, a tall figure watching me, unmoving, his face obscured. I shifted uncomfortably, feeling the hair on my neck prickle. The figure lingered, seeming to study me for a moment before turning and disappearing into the crowd. A chill ran down my spine. The morning after Etienne's encounter stayed with me. I returned to my spot at the gate, hands shaking as I clutched my sign. This time, I wasn't just looking for kindness from strangers. I was searching for something more revealing. I scanned every familiar face, hoping to see who would show their true nature. Moments later, Clara appeared, emerging from the front entrance, looking immaculate and composed, as if last night's confrontation hadn't happened. Her eyes scanned the street briefly before she turned, almost stepping on me as I sat near the gate. She barely glanced my way, her lips tight. I coughed, low but audible, drawing her attention. She paused, glancing down with a flash of irritation. "Oh, it's you again," she hissed, her face twisting with disdain. "Didn't I tell you to stay away?" I held my ground, feigning confusion. I only need a bit to get by, just for food." She scoffed, stepping back as if the mere sight of me repulsed her. "You beggars," she spat. "You're all the same, lazy, shameless. How many times do I have to tell you? Leave." "Mom, please," I murmured, lowering my gaze. "Just a bit of kindness from me." She snorted and moved closer, her voice a venomous whisper. "If I see you here again, I'll call the authorities. You'll regret testing me." I nodded, shrinking back, but as she stormed away, I clenched my fists, feeling my heart pound with a mixture of anger and sorrow. I hadn't expected her cruelty to run so deep. But it wasn't just Clara who concerned me. The shadowy figure from yesterday haunted my thoughts. Just as I started to rise, a voice interrupted my thoughts. "You look like you've had better days, friend." I turned to see a tall man, his face partly obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He offered a half smile, and a chill ran down my spine. There was something unsettlingly familiar about him. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The man tipped his hat, his gaze piercing. "Just someone who likes to observe," he replied with a smirk, then slipped into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared. The hairs on my neck stood up, and for the first time since starting this experiment, I felt an inkling of fear. The afternoon sun was slipping lower, casting long shadows over the driveway. I positioned myself at the mansion gate once more, feeling the weight of the day's encounters. My heart thumped with anticipation. This was the last day of my experiment, and I was ready to reveal my identity. As I waited, Clara emerged from the house, her heels clicking against the stone path. She glanced around, her face tightening as she noticed me once again. "Not you again," she muttered under her breath. She stormed up to me, hands on her hips. "Didn't I warn you? I'm calling the police this time." I held my gaze steady, letting the silence stretch. "Are you so quick to turn away someone in need, Clara?" Her face twisted in shock, and then confusion. How do you know my name?" She took a step back, eyes widening as she looked closer, finally catching the faint resemblance beneath the scruffy clothes and grime. "Mr. Slater," she whispered, horror dawning on her face. "Yes, Clara," I replied, my voice calm but steely. "It's me." Her mouth opened and closed as if words had abandoned her. But why? Why would you? Why would I pretend to be someone I'm not?" I interrupted, taking a step forward. I wanted to see who among you still had compassion, who would offer kindness without expecting anything in return. Clara's face paled, her mouth pressed in a tight line. Mr. Slater, I thought that I was just another worthless beggar. I finished, holding her gaze. Is that what you saw, Clara? She shifted uncomfortably, but before she could respond, Etienne walked out from the side door, holding a bag of food. His eyes met mine, and a flicker of recognition lit his face. "Oh, Mr. Slater," he exclaimed, looking both relieved and puzzled. "You're back. I mean, you're here." I nodded, feeling the warmth spread as I looked at him. "Etienne, you didn't have to help me. You didn't have to do anything, but you did." He nodded, a small smile forming. "Well, sir, kindness doesn't cost a thing." I turned back to Clara, who was now visibly trembling, her eyes downcast. "Today," I said, "I see who values people over appearances." A moment later, she stammered, "Mr. Slater, please, I didn't realize, But I raised a hand, silencing her. "Clara, actions speak louder than any apology." And with that, I left them both, knowing the experiment was over, and the truth had been revealed. A week had passed since I unmasked myself, but the memory of those final moments lingered. Clara had resigned, her last words to me a hurried mix of regret and excuses. Etienne, however, continued his work with the same steady grace. I knew I wanted to show my gratitude for his selflessness, but a simple reward didn't feel enough. This needed a lasting change, something that would inspire true kindness in others. One afternoon, I asked Etienne to meet me in the dining room. The air was thick with anticipation, and he entered, wiping his hands on a towel. "Mr. Slater, you wanted to see me?" he asked, his voice filled with a gentle humility. "Yes, Etienne," I said, gesturing for him to sit. "You've worked here for years, always with honesty and warmth, even when you had every reason to be resentful. I haven't thanked you properly yet." He blinked, clearly taken aback. "Oh, sir, you don't need to thank me. It's just what I believe in. Indeed, and I want that kindness of yours to live on, to spread beyond these walls," I said, pulling out a sheaf of papers. "I set up a foundation in your name, one that will support the homeless and those in need. A legacy of kindness, if you will." Etienne's eyes filled with shock, then welled with tears. He tried to speak, but only managed a hoarse whisper. I don't deserve this, sir." "On the contrary," I replied, smiling. "This is exactly what you deserve. And this way, others will see that small acts of kindness can change lives." As we sat in a quiet, shared moment, a phone rang. I answered, my assistant's voice sounding urgent. "Sir, we found that old woman who helped you by giving you the last of her money." "Good, let's go see her," I rejoiced. When we found her on the street, I walked over and said, "You helped me last week by giving me your last money. Now, I want to thank you. Here's an envelope with a check for $5,000 in it." She opened it, gasping at the sight of the check, but I stopped her before she could refuse. "This is a legacy of kindness, yours, mine, and Etienne's. Take it and spread it as you see fit." As she left, I felt an unexpected peace. My life had been forever changed, no longer defined by wealth alone, but by the warmth of human connection, by a legacy that would carry on beyond me. And in that moment, I knew I was truly wealthy.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.